Okay, we're going to try this again. We're dealing with basic geometry. My grandson is in 7th grade, and that's what they've been dealing with pretty much last semester. So we start with a point. Now, points are not necessarily something that you can see in nature, unless you think of a speck of dirt. That would be considered a point. But it's a constructive man so that we could determine length, width, height, and things of that nature. So our most basic geometric shape is not a shape at all. It is a point. And how do we name the point? By capital letters. A, B, C, D, and so on. Just a capital letter. That represents a point. Now, with the point, there's very little we can do with that. But if we have 2 points, point A and let's say point B, and then we connect the 2 points with, now we can create a line. Notice a line has arrows on the end, and we can call this line Y or X or G or A using the word line and lowercase, or we can name it by using a line symbol and the endpoints. And what do we get from a line? We find the distance between A and B, so that gives us length. And that's what we're looking for, and that's what will help us be successful. Now, notice I said AB, but we can also reverse that, BA. But we must always remember one thing. Length, width, and height can never be negative. It can be 0, which means there may not be length, which is 2-dimensional, just like a piece of paper, or it could be 3-dimensional, but it cannot be negative. So now, we talked about 2 shapes so far, the point and then the line, but what happens when we do not have arrows? So we have our point, and we'll call that A. Then we had our 2 points, and we created our line, which gives us distance. Distance we also consider length. How far? That could be line X, Y, or Z, or some other value, but we can also say that it's line AB or line BA. So that's one. This is our second one. Our third one is array. This is array. And we still have 2 points, AB. We can say ray AB, or we can use the ray symbol and also AB. There's no BA, but we only, again, are looking for the length between point A and point B. We cannot consider infinity because we cannot count infinity. So let's talk very briefly about infinity, going back to number 2. So on this side, we would have negative infinity. To the left is always negative infinity, and to the right, it's positive infinity. Now, if we orient it any other way, it's going to be basically the same thing. To the left will be negative, and to the right will be positive, except if it's vertical. And then on the bottom, we have negative infinity. And on the top, we have positive infinity. So that's basically on the bottom we have negative and up top we have positive infinity. Positive infinity up top. So we have our point, we have our line, we have our ray, and our ray is named AB. Notice I didn't say BA. And finally, we can look at a line segment. Now with the line segment, notice we have two endpoints. With the ray, we had an endpoint at A, but now we have endpoints at A and B. And we definitely can determine the length or the distance between A and B. And always remember, cannot be negative. So line segment, we can use just a bar over AB or a bar over BA. Notice I did not do that with the ray. Also, let's look at some differences. We're not going to include the point because the points are already included on our lines, different versions of our line. With our regular line, we've got two arrows on both ends, so that says the line extends indefinitely in at least in two directions, regardless of how you orient the line. It can be horizontal, it could be vertical, it could be diagonal, but it doesn't matter. You still have those arrows on the end saying you're continuing in one direction or the other, two directions. With a ray, you have an endpoint, whereas with the line, there is no endpoint. And on the other end, there is an arrow which says that's extending indefinitely in two directions. Now, let me see. What could be an example of that? A laser. How about that? Just bzzz. That works. Now notice one endpoint, arrow at the other endpoint. Now, at the other end, rather. With a line segment, we have two endpoints. With all of these, we can determine the length between those points. We cannot determine infinity or positive or negative infinity. That doesn't work. See you soon.